Evaluation question 7. Looking back at your preliminary task, what do you feel you've learned in the progression from it to the full product? Here you can see the two images with the college magazine on the left and the music magazine on the right. The first thing that comes to eye is my progression in the editing in Photoshop of the main image itself. As when you look at the image on the college magazine, it's had the most basic editing done to it using a black and white filter and editing out the background, as this seemed quite simple but effective at the time. However, with Steve's magazine I tried to get the opposite effect by editing it as much as I could, trying to mess around with the hue and saturation. As you can see, the colours have been inverted, so they're not the actual colours that were in the original image, and I think that this attracts the reader visually, because on a newsstand you can tell out of the two which would stand out more. Steve's magazine. Now the masthead on the college magazine used a basic font, and if you look at the fonts in general on the college magazine, they're not very consistent. As you can see where it says Insight into Freshers Week, the font it's a different font to the rest, and also it seems quite stretched. That's another thing I think I've learned a lot about, the size of the fonts. As you can see on Steve's magazine, the fonts are effective so that they're large enough to be able to see, so that the masthead and the main cover line stands out. However, they're not distorted in any way. Also, you can see the placement. So the cover lines on the college magazine Wisdom seem as if they've almost been just put there because they have to be there, whereas on Steve's magazine they've been put in a way that they fit in, like at the bottom of the page. They don't obscure the image, whereas when I was making the college magazine I didn't really know where to put them, and after researching and looking at other magazines I've just seen how they've been put in general. Now when you look at Steve's magazine, the first thing which, like when I was looking at Wisdom magazine, that I noticed was wrong was that there wasn't enough content. Because if you're going to pay $3.99 for a magazine, which is overpriced, you're going to be expecting a lot of content. The target audience, which would have been students, they're not going to have that type of money. So I decided to lower the price to $2.99 for my hip hop magazine, which compared to some of the other magazines is reasonable, and they were all going for around £2.99, £3.99. I also, through looking at magazines such as Vice, got the inspiration of having a bold masthead, which is almost as a logo, but doesn't take up the whole of the top of the image. It kind of follows Vice in the way that it stays in the top left, but the concentration was of the image, not on the masthead. I also wasn't very experimenting when I was doing the college magazine, so in my Steve's hip hop magazine I decided to add a puffer where it says plus, because then I can fit in more content and it makes more sense, and also it's kind of more attractive for the eye, because your eye goes straight to where it says Steve's plus, and then it kind of makes sense as well. Now the clothing on the model also has more relation, because although dressing up in a suit and a tie on the college magazine, I guess there is a relation to success and being a student, but at college there isn't a uniform like that for the students. So in Steve's magazine I tried to keep it so that the model's wearing clothes which are relevant to the story. The audience should be able to see parts of themselves in the magazine. So for instance, they may wear baseball caps, they may wear hooded jackets like that and have a cold facial expression, whereas I don't think many students could relate so much to the image of the college magazine. Now the cover line on Steve's magazine has been made on Photoshop and is a lot more complex and has a greater effect than when the same font was used on the college magazine. I also found that a lot of good fonts can be found online on websites such as DaFont. You can also see effective cropping of the image, as in the college magazine there's a big gap above his head, Whereas on Steve's magazine, I just wanted to capture the main part of the image which I thought was most attractive and most effective in portraying the situation. I also decided not to put the date on the front cover because it's not really needed, takes up valuable room, and I think I wanted to preserve the space on Steve's magazine. Now you can see that the audience has been represented in Steve's magazine through the language used, so it says Kendrick on why he don't smoke, which isn't grammatically correct, but it's something that the reader will be familiar with. Also, I've gone for some unique colours to try and show that the magazine's more unique, whereas with the Wisdom magazine I tried to go for basic colours. Now we'll go on to the contents page. As you can see, on the left is my college magazine, and on the right is my Steve's magazine, my hip hop magazine. The first thing that comes to eye is my advance in the use of shapes. Through looking at other hip hop magazines, I've learned that shapes can be used for backgrounds for text, for example where it says features, and for where it says the date, like November, December. And also, they can be used to highlight important things, for example where it says exclusive. I tried that in my college magazine, however they didn't really signify any importance, it was more there just to fill space. I've also looked into how shades of colours can be more or less visually attractive, as from my college magazine, just from looking at where it says January, the colour red is quite dark, isn't very visually attractive, so in my hip hop magazine, and through looking at other hip hop magazines that were out there already, such as XXL, I've realised that they try to use a lot of brighter shades of colours. I've also learnt a lot about taking the pictures themselves and how the images relate to the story and how the audience is represented through it. Which I realised that sometimes the angle that the picture is taken can have a big effect on how the image looks. I went for simple images in my college magazine, however in my hip hop magazine I tried to take a range of images from a range of different angles. As you can see, there's one which is from overhead, where the model's sitting on the skateboard. There's one which is from the side, where the model is doing a pose as well, which is also in relation to hip hop. I didn't use many poses in my college magazine, as I couldn't really think of any that related to school in general. I also realised and felt more confident that images can be used which are unique, for example where the models are facing the other way. When making my college magazine I would have been scared to do something like this, however through looking at hip hop magazines I've learnt that they're quite unique and all show rebellious natures. When making my hip hop magazine I learnt how to use bolder fonts for the main titles, for example where it says Skating with Yeezy, which is one of the contents. I learnt how to use the bolder font without making it too bold, because as you can see in the college magazine there's quite a lot of bolts, for example where it says Skins and Freshers, it's a little bit too big and it doesn't really fit in with the text underneath it, whereas on the hip hop magazine I've managed to do it in a way where it fits in and it's kind of a similar house style. You can tell that they're both from the same magazine and they don't really correspond each other negatively in any way. Also through looking at hip hop magazines I've learnt that it's important to highlight the key things which will draw the audience's attention. For example, celebrities' names, as you can see Lil Wayne and Ian Connor. In doing so, when the readers look at the magazine they instantly see the most important bits. Also, when I was doing my primary research, I found out some of the top used social media websites by my audience. So I managed to put them at the bottom of the page, as they don't take up much space, but are visible and can be seen by the readers. As in my college magazine, it's quite big and takes up valuable space. The date's also been placed next to where it says features and at the bottom of the page along with the folio number and magazine website. I think it got a better effect when it's subtle, as through looking at other magazines, they try to make everything in the page which they want to add in subtle and work with the rest of the page. As just from looking at the contents page for the Hip Hop magazine, you can tell that it all fits together and corresponds a lot more than in the college magazine, where some of the fonts don't suit, and the placement also. I've also used a lot of different images in my hip hop magazine. As looking at magazines such as XXL, I saw that they tried to introduce a range of different pictures which would keep the reader interested. So you can see they all are quite different in nature. One is of obviously a model posing, there's another one of a model sitting on a skateboard, and another of two models who are facing the doors if they're going to break in. Now, just from looking at these pictures, the readers should be able to tell or have a rough idea of what the story is going to be about, which will keep them interested and make them want to read on. I also made a Steez Contents logo just for the contents page, which you can see where it says November and December. As through looking at other magazines, I've realised it's a good way to have something which is recognisable and can be associated with the contents page itself. I've also added a lot more contents as I feel the readers need to get more value for their money. $2.99, which is a reasonable price. If you're a reader and you're paying that, you'd want a lot of content, you want value for your money, you want good images, and you want something which you'll think money well spent, not something that you'll pay for, read quickly, and not really feel like you've got your money's worth. I also added in a lot of categories so that the reader can quickly find what they're looking for. For example, it says Threads, Gigs, Producer's House. Just from looking at this, it's quite easy to follow, and the readers can quickly find what they're looking for, and also see what's in the magazine just from a quick glance.